When AI enters your organization, you've got to decide who controls it. Do you centralize it under one team with clear governance and standards? Or do you let individual teams experiment, learn, and build what they need? One option creates consistency, the other fosters innovation. Today, centralize AI control or let teams experiment. Let's figure out which one fits your situation. Welcome to Binary Business. I'm Will Guidry. This is episode 5. We're using the ABCD framework to break down AI decisions: audience, build, convert, deliver. Today's decision determines whether AI becomes a controlled asset or a distributed capability. That choice affects speed, quality, and political dynamics. This isn't about control versus freedom, it's about leverage. So let's get into it. Centralize AI control or let teams experiment. Here's the scenario. AI is becoming available across your organization. Different teams want to use it for different things. Sales wants it for AI lead scoring. Marketing wants it for content generation. Finance wants it for forecasting. So, you've got a choice. Option 1, centralize control. You build a central AI team, set standards, create governance, and every AI initiative goes through them. Teams get AI capabilities, but they don't get to pick their own tools or build their own solutions. Option 2, let teams experiment. Give teams budget, access, and autonomy. Let them figure out what works. Let innovation emerge from the edges instead of being dictated from the center. Most companies try to split the difference. They centralize some things, decentralize others, and a few months later, nobody kind of knows what's what. You've got duplicate tools, inconsistent data, and teams working around the central AI team because approval takes too long. Here's what I see working these days. Early on, let teams experiment. You don't know what AI is good for just yet. Let people try things, fail fast, and learn. Later, centralize the pieces that matter: data, governance, security. But let teams keep autonomy on execution. The mistake is centralizing too early or staying decentralized too long. If you centralize too early, you kill innovation. Teams stop experimenting because the approval process is too slow. The central AI team becomes the bottleneck. If you stay decentralized too long, you get chaos. 15 teams are using 12 different AI tools. None of them talk to each other. The data's fragmented and nobody can measure your ROI. So the question isn't centralized versus decentralized. The question is, what should be centralized now? What should stay decentralized? And when does that change? Let's break that down a bit further. Binary 1, centralize AI control. Centralizing AI control means one team owns the AI strategy, sets the standards, controls the tools, and governs how AI gets used across the organization. Here's when this works. First, when consistency matters more than speed. If your business requires standardized processes, centralized control ensures AI gets deployed uniformly. Same tools, same data, same governance. Second, if the risk is high. If AI mistakes can affect customer trust, regulatory compliance, or financial accuracy, centralized control creates the oversight that you need. Third, if you're scaling AI and you need to avoid duplication. If 10 teams are all solving the same problem with different AI tools, centralizing saves money and it also creates efficiency. But here's what happens when you centralize too early or too rigidly. The central AI team becomes a bottleneck. Teams submit requests, wait weeks for approval, and by the time the AI solution is ready, the business needs have likely changed. Or the central team builds solutions that don't fit the actual workflow. They're optimizing for consistency, not usability. Teams stop using the AI because it doesn't solve their real problem. Or worst case, teams start working around the central AI team. They buy their own tools with discretionary budget, build shadow AI systems, and now you've got decentralization anyway. except it's uncontrolled and invisible. Centralized control works when consistency and governance matter more than speed. It fails when it becomes bureaucracy. Binary 0. Let teams experiment. Letting teams experiment means individual teams have autonomy to pick their own AI tools, build their own solutions, and learn through trial and error. Here's when this works. First, you don't know what AI is good for yet. Early on, experimentation creates learning. Let teams try things. Some will fail, some will work. The ones that work become templates for scaling. Second, speed matters more than consistency. If your competitive advantage is moving fast, decentralized experimentation beats centralized planning. Third, teams have domain expertise the central AI team doesn't. Sales knows sales, marketing knows marketing, operations knows operations. Let them apply the AI to their specific problems instead of waiting for a central team to understand their workflow. But here's the trap. If you let teams experiment indefinitely, you get fragmentation. 15 teams are using 12 different AI tools, none of them integrate, the data is siloed, and when you try to measure ROI across the organization, you can't because every team is tracking different metrics. Or teams build solutions that work for them but create problems downstream. Sales builds an AI-powered lead scoring system that flags leads that marketing believes are low quality. Or operations automates a workflow that breaks finance's reporting system. Nobody's optimizing for the whole business. Or you get duplicated effort. 3 teams independently build the same AI capability because they don't know what the others are doing. You spent 3 times the budget to get the same outcome only once. So experimentation works when speed and learning matter more than consistency. It fails when it turns into chaos. So here's the real question. This decision comes down to maturity and risk. Centralize when AI is mature in your organization. The risk is high and consistency matters more than speed. Let teams experiment when AI is new, or if you're still learning and speed matters more than consistency. Here's the part many operators tend to miss. This isn't a one-time decision. You start decentralized to learn. You centralize the pieces that matter as you scale. Then you decentralize execution while keeping centralized governance. So the path is experiment, consolidate, standardize governance, redistribute execution. Most companies skip steps and end up with either too much control or too much chaos. Here's a quick note. If this kind of decision breakdown is useful, subscribe. I'm doing one AI decision every Tuesday and Thursday. In the next episode, train everyone on AI or build specialists. We're talking about how to build AI capability across your organization. All right, let's get into the ABCD. A is for audience. This is where you ask, who's affected by centralized control versus experimentation? If you centralize, the central AI team gains control. They set the standards, they approve the tools, they govern the usage. That's good if they're competent and responsive. It's bad if they become gatekeepers. The teams using AI lose autonomy. They have to wait for approval. They have to use the tools the central team picks, and they can't move very fast. That creates frustration sometimes. I've seen teams abandon AI initiatives entirely because the central approval process takes 6 weeks. By the time they get approval, the business problem has changed, or they found a different solution. If you let the teams experiment, the teams gain autonomy. They move fast, they build what they need, but the central team loses visibility. They don't know what's being used, how much is being spent, or whether teams are actually creating additional risk. So here's the balance. Centralize governance, decentralize execution. The central team sets standards for data security, privacy, compliance, and integration. Teams now have to follow those standards, but within those guardrails, teams can pick their own tools and build their own solutions. That way, the central team controls the risk without controlling the speed. The other audience question is, how does this affect customers? If teams are experimenting with customer-facing AI, do customers get inconsistent experiences? If sales is using one AI tool and support is using another, Are customers confused? Centralized control creates consistency. Experimentation creates variability. Know which one your customers value more. B is for build. This is the systems layer. This is where you ask, what infrastructure supports centralized control versus experimentation? If you centralize, you need a strong central team. They need to understand AI deeply enough to set good standards. They need to move fast enough that they don't become the bottleneck. And they need political capital to enforce the standards when teams push back. Some companies centralize AI control and put someone in charge who doesn't understand AI. Teams will ignore them. The centralization fails within a few months. If you let teams experiment, you need visibility infrastructure. You can't let teams run wild without knowing what they're doing, so build a registry. Require teams to document what AI tools they're using, what problems they're solving, and what data they're accessing. Without visibility, experimentation becomes kind of shadow IT. You don't know what's being used until something breaks. The other question, what happens to the learning? If teams are experimenting, how do the learnings get captured or shared? If marketing figures out a great AI use case, does sales know about it? Or does every team reinvent the wheel each time? If you centralize, how do insights from the field get back to the central team? If operations finds a limitation in the centralized AI tool, does the central team listen and adapt, or do they defend the tool and ignore the feedback? Build feedback loops. Whether you centralize or decentralize, learning has to flow. C is for conversion. This is the revenue lens. This is where you ask, how does this decision affect the money? If you centralize, you reduce duplication. One AI tool instead of 5. One team instead of 15 people scattered across departments. That's cost efficiency. But centralization also slows things down. If approval takes 3 weeks, you're losing the revenue opportunity that a faster AI deployment would have unlocked. One client centralized AI control. Every team had to submit requests to the central AI team. The approval process took 4 weeks on average. Sales wanted AI for lead scoring. By the time it was approved and deployed, the quarter was over. They missed the revenue opportunity. So if you let teams experiment, you get speed. Sales could deploy AI for lead scoring in a week. Marketing can test AI for content generation tomorrow. That speed generates revenue opportunities. But experimentation also creates waste. If 3 teams independently build the same capability, you spent 3 times the budget. If teams pick tools that don't integrate, you're creating technical debt that costs you later. So here's the ROI calculation in this case. Centralized control reduces waste, but increases opportunity cost. Experimentation increases waste, but reduces opportunity cost. The right choice depends on whether you're optimizing for efficiency or for speed. If your market is slow moving and consistency matters, centralize. If your market is fast moving and first mover advantage matters, let teams experiment. And here's another thing that many companies miss. Track the cost of delay. If central approval takes 4 weeks, what revenue are you losing by waiting? If that number is higher than the cost of duplicate tools, decentralization wins. D is for delivery. This is where you look downstream. This is where you also ask what happens after the AI gets deployed. If you centralize, delivery becomes more consistent. Same tools, same standards, same outcomes. That's good when predictability matters. It's bad when adaptation matters. A client centralized their AI strategy, and the central team built a standard AI-powered customer support tool and rolled it out across the entire region. It worked great in the US, but it failed in Europe because the central team didn't account for language differences, privacy regulations, and cultural expectations around customer service. In this case, centralized control optimized for consistency, but it ignored local context. So if you let teams experiment, delivery becomes more adaptive. Each team builds what fits their specific context. That's good when context matters, but it's bad when you need to scale that. Another client let every team experiment. Sales built an AI lead scoring tool and marketing built a separate AI content tool. Operations built an AI workflow tool. None of them integrated with each other. Sales couldn't pass lead data to marketing. Marketing couldn't coordinate campaigns with operations. The business became a collection of disconnected AI tools. Experimentation created innovation in this case, but it also killed coordination. So here's a simple rule. Centralize the things that need to be consistent. Decentralize the things that need to adapt. Data standards should be centralized. Every team should use the same data formats, the same privacy protocols, the same security standards, while execution should be decentralized. Let sales build the AI lead scoring tool that fits their workflow. Let marketing build the AI content tool that fits their process. But make sure the tools can talk to each other. Centralize the integration layer. Decentralize the application layer. That's how you get speed and consistency. All right, here's the call. Most companies either centralize too early and kill innovation, or they stay decentralized too long and create chaos. Here's the sequence that tends to work. Start decentralized, then let teams experiment for 6 to 12 months. See what works. Let that innovation emerge. Then consolidate and identify the use cases that actually created value with your AI. Standardize those, and then shut down the experiments that didn't work. After that, centralize governance. Build standards for data, security, privacy, and integration. Make those non-negotiable. Then decentralize the execution. Let teams build their own AI solutions within those centralized standards. This gives you innovation early and consistency later. Here's the part to pay attention to. You need a forcing function to move from experimentation to consolidation. If you let teams experiment indefinitely, they'll never consolidate. Set a deadline. Say, hey, we're experimenting for 6 months. After that, we're consolidating the winners and killing the rest. Without a deadline, experimentation becomes permanent fragmentation. And one more thing, don't centralize because you don't trust your teams. I've seen executives centralize AI control because they're worried that teams will make bad decisions. That's a management problem, not a governance problem. If you don't trust your teams to make good decisions about AI, you have bigger issues than centralization versus decentralization. So centralize to create consistency and reduce risk. Don't centralize to avoid delegation. Thanks for listening to Binary Business. If you're trying to figure out whether to centralize AI or let teams experiment, use the binary decision scorecard. It'll help you see where you are in the maturity curve. The link to the tool is in the description. In the next episode, train everyone on AI or build specialists. We're breaking down how to build AI capability across your organization. Subscribe so you don't miss it. And if you're on YouTube, hit the like if this was useful. This is Binary Business. All signal, no noise.